Hi, well, this is Laxman Rai from Bangalore. I had my upbringing and my education, everything in Bangalore here itself. And I've been pursuing poetry for the last 3 decades. And that, only in the COVID period, I could make some time out of myself, my work, and I could come out my poetic debut in the form of the world within. The world within. Okay, I'll elaborate a bit later on, but let me carry on with this uh, interaction session with myself, very like I convey of what poetry is all about and who the poet I am, what sort of a poet I am. So with the varied emotions and different nuances and subtleties of this poet in me. I don't consider myself a poet, but there's a poet in me, so whom I wish to bring it out for you all. Well then, every time I say this, like whenever I do speak of poetry and poetics, the poet in me speaks while it's not me. So this is one phrase or which I coined or else paraphrase with myself and stuck to it. Keep on saying like when I do speak of poetry and poetics, the poet in me speaks while it's not me. The thing is like there's there is this person who comes out with his voice, who speaks his voice and who brings out his voice in form of verses, and which the body frame, the physical frame, it's me, who just tries to write whatever the consciousness of the body says or speaks of. So that's what I mean, and I differ from the poet to a person. So that's what I have defined or described or known of myself in a gradual process of penning poetry. So that's what I am. So I'd like to go with the IQ of one of my IQ like poetry, a flower, a rhythmic rhapsody, a poet's true color. Poetry, a flower, a rhythmic rhapsody, a poet's true color. That's from IQ. Yeah, it's just like it's sort of a poetry, sort of a flower, rhythmic rhapsody. It has beautiful rhapsody around its petals, and which gives different aroma or else aura, as in its true color, a poet's true color. So that's how I bring in poetry as, or else I see poetry as, because as music mystifies one's mind, so does poetry suits one's soul. So does poetry suits one's soul. So that's how I describe it. Okay. Well, coming to this poetry, in my school days, my early days, like I haven't thought of writing poetry or something else. But if you ask me, like, what are things that you remember as a childhood student, like in connection with that of poetry, there's one Manusmriti verse, who is considered one of the legend in our mythological verses. He says that if you take coconut tree as a brush, if you take the entire ocean as ink, and if you take the entire sky as canvas, you can't fill the entire canvas with the words of mother's law. It will be insufficient. The ink will be insufficient, and the canvas will also be insufficient. I may not be exactly pitching the way it has to be. It has to be framed the way it has been coined. I'm not saying that. Whatever I connect to that theme of poetry, I'm just trying to explain it a bit here. So that's all. So there are certain things that impacts you, that gives an impact to you, and which keeps in your mind for a very long time. And even if you can recollect with yourself, there are certain only few poetic poems that you can remember too. For example, I have this Kavita's Doha in my mind. कल करे सो आज कर राज करे सो अब पल में परलय होएगी बहुरी करोगे कब. Whatever you want to do tomorrow, do it today. And whatever you want to do it today, why not now? You never know where and how will be the very next moment. So there are many classical poets India, whom I am trying to know on a day-to-day basis. For example, like Annamaya, the same poet of Lord Balaji, who has written 30,000 lyrical works. 30,000 lyrical works. And I don't think like anywhere in the world we can find any certain poet on those terms. And we have Vemana, is a poet who was brought in poetry, who has brought in the society into the poetry. It is like we might be one of these who is very much conscious about the society, the norms of society, and the peoples and their livings and their attributes and tributes towards their living. So that the many people, many saints, many poets, many philosophers whom we come across in our whole daily life. When you take up poetry as a matter of fact, well then, like once I was being interviewed by Mr. Muhammad Fakhruddin, who is the editor and the publisher of International Poetry Magazine. He asked me like, why did you choose poetry? That was one beautiful question like which intrigued me a lot. He asked me like, why did you choose poetry? I said like, poetry comes as a blessing in disguise. Never in my vague dreams have I ever thought of writing poetry. It just had to trigger when it had to be. It just triggered when it had to be. And if at all I have to poetize it in a certain way of saying, I would like to say this like, I didn't choose poetry while the poetry has chosen me. I didn't choose poetry, rather poetry has chosen me. So that's the part of poetizing. The way you present yourself, the way you pick the tone of words, or the way you bring it to the force. That's how the poetry comes out. It's not rather it will be a dull or dumb prose sort of thing. Very like it's a plain talk. There's nothing to speak about poetry there. It will be dumb talk for me. So that's how I used to feel like. So it doesn't matter how many poems you've written. It doesn't matter the uh, quantity of poems, while it's the quality of poems. Even if Shakespeare has written 125 sonnets, he is hailed one of the greatest poets in the world. Why? The reason is like the way he has brought in all these lines. Because see, every poet has his own ideology, his own theme, his own structure, his own pattern, his own. Before ideology could form into into a poet, he just is a fancy player. He just is a dreamer. He's just a like a big writer. Okay, he just writes on the moon, the skies, the mountains, the oceans, everything. But once he is gone through all this in his journey, then he takes up poetry seriously. It's only then his ideology come into foreplay. So what's my ideology then? So ideology, well, I've taken up my ideology at a later stage, wherein like I am totally into constructive of the poet and the his poetics, his nuances, his subtleties, his tonality, the accent, everything of a poet, which the themes which circumscribes a poet. Those entire themes, I try to take notes of it and try to make a make create poems out of them. So that is what I feel like, and I've been going through all these days. So that is one thing. Because thing is like, as I said, like there are only few things you can connect to a poet. If you take, for example, Shakespeare, he says like all the world's a stage. And so the first thing what you remember of Shakespeare is this first line. So if you take kids, he says like beauty is truth and truth beauty. That is all you know and all you ought to know. So this is one thing that strikes you. So what makes you an impactful poet? That matters a lot. It's not like writing 22 lines or 32 lines or 40 lines as a word or a lyrical word, whatever. But even if you say a word, line or two lines, that should be something enigmatic, that should give an enigmatic touch and poetic appeal to the person who reads it. So that's what I try to bring in, because poetry is one such art which can't be taught. I strictly believe this. I firmly follow this line. Poetry is one such art which can't be taught. And that, and if the many people we come across in our daily life, in terms of poetic journey, that we can't talk to Tom, Dick, and Harry on the way saying like, I'm a poet, I have written a poem, just read to listen to this. You just can't be that way. All that you can be is like you can talk to some of your poets, fellow poets who are on Facebook or somewhere anywhere else around the globe, or if you have very good acquaintances with certain poets, you can talk to them. But when it comes to the common man, you just can't discuss all your poetic mindset, poetic nuances, your subtleties, your inner emotions, feelings, whatsoever, so forth comes out. So what I'm going to say is like, not that you encourage me, I'm inspired to write. Not that you encourage me, I'm inspired to write. And that you discourage me, I will cease to write. I will cease to write. Nobody will inspire you to write. Nobody will give you a pen and paper and ask you to write. Bloody, you just sit here and try to write a poem on sun or the ocean, because you just can't write it that way until unless you don't have a feeling that comes out from you like volcanic vent. Unless you don't have vent, that doesn't make you sit. That doesn't make you compelled to sit and write it as poetry. It doesn't comes out that easy. So poetry, that doesn't come easy. And if it has to come, it has to come as naturally as organic way. As Keats says this, like, if poetry should come, it should come as leaves to plants, if not at all. So that's the beauty of Keats, who said it in a subtle way. Like, it should come as leaves to plants, it's not at all. So yeah, it should be certain organic way. It should be some organic way. Very recently, like in my apartments, like one of my guy, he kept the bike. I kept my bike in his arena, in his car parking, and he began saying like, who is this person who has kept here? He began giving a chat sort of thing. Then I said to myself like, I wrote two lines. I may not be a good friend of yours. I may not be a good friend of yours, while neither I am your worst foe. I may not be a good friend of yours, while I am neither your worst foe. So what happens is that comes naturally. There's an instant, there's a circumstance, there's an incident over there. So there's an impulsive instinct that comes out of your own, saying like, this is what it comes out, it speaks out from within. So there's this poet who speaks out that way, so brings out in that manner. So that's what I mean to say it. So here I would like to come up with one of my poem, a poet's poem. It's a manifestation of one's mime voice, that which he imbibes, imitates as smiles. Every poet has this theoretical ideology, as he loves his synchronized style of poetry, and in defense to the world shall disown himself, rather discard or disagree with anyone else. A prejudiced pseudo-poet, you can call him, less a lion, a self-proclaimed king of woods. What I mean to say is like, you might be a proclaimed king of the woods, but you might be, if you are a president person, you would be within yourself, you're a pseudo-poet sort of a person. But its inner voice, it's the rhythm voice that imitates a person, that comes out of a person, is this poetry. If a lion groans, you might have seen its voice. We can't see that voice with any animal out of anywhere, isn't it? So a poet has his own uh, vibe, his emotional drive, you can say that, emotional drive, which speaks of its own. So that's how it comes. Here, I conclude that awakened consciousness is what makes me awe to go for a drive, to pen a poet's poem, So here, on the whole, like the poet and the person, they both imbibe together to come out with something fascinating to enrich himself, or to enlighten himself, or to make him awe of himself, to bring out something new out of nothing, out of obscure, out of abstractness. So that's how my theology of that that certain poems. When it comes to this, like I've been saying this about poet and the person. Well, this poem like identity crisis. Identity crisis. Am I the person whom you are aware? The person I know better than myself? Or is the subconscious Twitter this speaks consciously on his creative endeavor? You see this? Like consciously on his creative endeavor. Okay. Who am I? Am I the body of mass? Whom I do represent as my name? Or the element spirit who lives within? Should I take up the credit for what I am? Should I take up credit for who I am? Who better connects to me on the wall? Better connects to me on the wall? The brief the body or the sanctum soul? You see here, the beauty of poetry is this. Like so, at times, like whenever we write, we read out our own poems. Like we feel there's awestruck. We get awestruck like with some awesomeness. We feel like, yeah, did I write this? There will be a question in ourselves like, did I write this? So that means like you have given that enigmatic touch to that poem, to that content. So that matters a lot. That brings the difference. What you bring as a matter of difference to the table of discussion, that matters a lot. If not, everything is a plain talk. And if you can talk on everything and anything for that matter. So a poet is a person like he has to be born but not to be made. Poets are born but not made. The poet should be a born product sort of a person. All that of thing is like the poet should be a born product sort of a person. I used to say this like I wish to be a wild lily in the wilderness. I wish to be a wild lily in the wilderness, rather a beautiful rose in the farmyard. Rather a beautiful rose in the farmyard, which doesn't have any fragrance. Whereas in the wilderness, the wild lily has its essence around it and its aroma and essence around it. It's better to be that. Why do you want to become a rose? So it differs from person to person. So here the identity crisis comes to the fore when we discuss about this poetry and the poetics, the poet. The identity crisis comes to the fore. It says reciting, but who sings my folklore? But who sings my folklore? The thing is like when I'm talking about the poet and this poetry, who is the person who brings it to the folklore? It's the verses or me, if at all I'm talking about the person who is within me. So who brings out the who sings my folklore? So that's one volta. What you call in poetic terms, poetic nuances. It's called as volta. The way you come up with the contrast connection in a couplet. So this one of these two one of this couplet with me. If plants are parents of seeds, if plants are parents of seeds, so are seeds forefathers of plants. If plants are the parents of seeds, so are seeds forefathers of plants. So it has its own tidal timing sort of thing. So which makes it an appealing factor. That's what I mean to say. There are certain people who come across to me and say like, we have read your quotes or your quotes are very well. We used to think like you just write quotes because because I strike a chord with every reader with that of my quotes because they are simple, crisp, concise in saying. A subtle way of saying in a condensed manner. Just in 2 lines, you need to convey what exactly it has to convey in its entire circumference. So here is one of my this thing quote: "Love me for what I am, as I can't hate you for what you are. Love me for what I am, as I can't hate you for what you are." So this is as simple as that. Well, there's one more thing. Everything you write is not poetry. Everything you write is not poetry, and everyone who writes is not a poet, and every person who writes is not a poet. So this I have this very good balance of balancing of words, conveying of words. it's not like you get carried away with your thoughts while writing, but it's that of proper channelizing, proper condensing, framing, phrasing, and the entire gamut of things comes under poetizing. Poetizing, I call it as poetizing for me. But we can't be a very good judge of other writers. We can be at least a uh, better guide for ourselves. That's what I feel so. For me, poetry is something. I'm a poet of senses rather than of thoughts. I'm a poet of senses rather of thoughts. The reason is like I believe in my sensibilities, the know-how, the emotional aspects, the upheaval of feelings I go through. So I don't try to write on the moon, the stars, and whatever I see. My father's jacket, or else my mother's sari. I just can't connect to that way. I connect things with certain sensibilities. So, as I said, like I'm a man of poet of senses rather than of thoughts. So here, I bring in the psychology of a poet. I bring in psychology of a person. Even when I read Keats or Byron or Wordsworth, I try to see what exactly his state of mind is, what exactly his tonality is, the accent of the voice is. When you read a certain poem, we can connect to his vibe. And only certain few people have that uh, judgment, wherein like at what certain phase you would have written this poem. So at what state of mind you would have versed it, versified it. So that matters. That matters. So here I have one poem. I have no fears. I have no fears with the knowledge of my future, for I'm not a flag bearer or the poetic art of artistry. I say that I have no fears with the knowledge of my future. The reason is like I don't know if in the future they may accept me as a poet or not. I don't have any fears for that factor. For I'm not a flag bearer of poetry, as it's an artistic art. So that's how it comes to me. And at the final touch, I give it in this form. Like it's a pure psychosis. It's a pure psychosis. Welcome to my poetry with an open mind. It's a vast psychometry. It's a vast psychometry. That's a beauty of my poetry. I believe so. And after reading several poems, like every person, every poet has his own sort of frame. Like this is how a poem should be, sort of a thing will be there. Every person. So there is one poem with me, like just say that a poem should be how a poem should be. Like every person has his own theoretical knowledge, like how a poem should be. So here I have my own thesis and my own knowledge, like how the poem should be. The poem title is like poem should be. The poem should be like a serene scene. The poem should be like a serene scene, a scene of beauty the eyes never seen. The scene of beauty the eyes never seen. The poem should be like a serene scene, a scene of beauty the eyes never seen. Nature with its own arms at its creation, a creation never has to be created again. The joy which beautifies quantified bliss, the bliss which quantifies beautified sense, the sense wherein thousand thoughts kiss and bliss, while in ecstasy one has tears at once. With that, every bard, as though blind as envy, being conquered by his art, mind, and faith, for the one who has versed it well, still has to find forbidden words of ivy. The beauty of thought should transcend the truth. The beauty of thought should transcend the truth, not that the truth should describe its beauty, not that the truth should describe its beauty. So, the corporate part, as you know, like I've been talking about the Volta, so it comes in a reverse swing, as in we see in cricket, reverse swing. So that gives a flash on your face, like out of nowhere. So that only then you feel that enigmatic touch. So as to be a reader, so as to be a writer, or so as to be a poet, you need to bring out this subtleness into our writing. So only then, like readers, they will be interested in reading your verses. That's what I feel so. Because until unless it doesn't mystifies your mind, until unless you are not happy with what you are writing, I don't think any reader will read it. First, it's you who should be convinced of, yeah, this is the best thing which I have wrote. So only then it can attract to other people, saying like, yeah, this is something awesome. There should be a wow factor. There should be an awesome factor. That saying like, yeah, this is a beautiful verse that someone like Lakshman Rai has written, or Prasanna sir has written, or Mr. Sai has written, so and so forth. Like, so that people should identify you with that verse rather on the other hand. So they should identify with your verse. Like, yes, this is a style, this is a signature style of substance of Mr. Lakshman Rao. So that's what it brings out, stands out among the crowd. The entire world, in the entire world, many poets are writing poetry. So, but where do you stand? Where do you stand? Unless if you don't have an ideology, you're just nothing. You're just nothing. So you, I had to derive an ideology within myself, like because I used to roam around the poet and his consciousness and subconsciousness and his entire dream of thoughts. So that's where I came up with this ideology, like I'll be within the spheres of this poetic consciousness, the in knowing the inside of me. So that's how that's how I came up with this book, The World Within. You can say this, The World Within. The World Within, as I said, like is the inner world, the poetic world. So that's how I came up with that thought, that title, The Inner World. So I would like to read this poem, The Inner World, for you. The world within is less traveled, much unknown and explicitly unexplored. As I sneak into my pivotal past, where I missed every moment of my passing thoughts, those excited, fantasized, or repelled, I lost a great zeal of myself unknown, longing for a livelihood, but not from the deep core of my mind that I would reveal myself, for the fact that poetry bridges that gap of me, the detachment from me, from self and the outer world. As I'm just sociable to the known world, I'm just sociable to the known world, yet unknown for the known few, yet unknown to the known few. But I leave myself loose so as to be understood. But I leave myself loose so as to be understood, for I would be left misunderstood. For I would be left misunderstood. So here, if you can see, if you can understand that word, the swing, the reverse swing, you can understand like how how I how I frame thoughts. So that's a pattern. There's a pattern in saying that, in poetizing it. I believe that. So that was the world within for you. So which I came at a later stage here. That's how I point the world within at the title. So there's one more sonnet for you here. Poesy, the world of wisdom. Here the poem is the world of wisdom. Poesy is such that it is profound. It travels as stanzas into a trance. A meditative mood, a stillness sound, mystic morph mind shall be yours in a glance. It could heal, seal one's invisible wounds and soothe one's scrambled senses, for instance, or act as guiding path in the lost woods. It would be a reviving radiance, the gleaming glow of a sage's face, the shintling, sharp radiant rays, or the subduing morning misty haze. Beams as in the beacon, beamingly grace. It could open one's insight. It could open one's insight, make one show the world of wisdom. Only few could know. Only few could know. Well, here's the couplet which summarizes the entire thing. Like it could open one's insight, make you know the world of wisdom. Only few could know. So this is one of my which I feel like beautiful saying that. The other part is like a person as a poet. I'm very lonely person. As a poet, as a person also. I'm very lonely poet, and I don't have many friends. I don't have friends for that matter that many have understood as of now. There's one thing like I wrote. very not recently, but long ago. I'm a, I'm alone amidst the world. I'm alone amidst the world, while a world when I'm alone. I'm alone amidst the world, while a world when I'm alone. That means like when I'm alone, I'm a world by myself. So the poet and me, I myself, we both journey together into a different trance, different world, wherein we communicate with each other and we try to be with oneness. The poet and the person try to be in oneness. The duality in unison. There's one poem of mine wherein I have this title as duality in unison. So we are the two different, the body and the mind, the poet and the person it's like the body and the body and the body and the mind. So here I speak about the poet and the person as in two dualities, and they are in unison. They are, again, they come into unison. So that's how I frame. And the other part, what I would like to say about you, is like living a poet's life. It's very, it's not that easy to lead a poet's life. It's not that easy. Like every time, sometimes like the poet wants to come out of you, and he wants to explore certain things. But given your limitations and constraints which you have built around yourself, you might not even sneak through. But the poet in you, he will have his insight. He will perceive it. He will perceive it. He will discover it. He will extract what exactly he wants out of it. So that's where the person and the poet differs, for that matter. So the thing is, the thing why I talk about the poet and the person is this thing, like this entire difference between a poet and a person. I would like to say, like see, for many people, for poetry is passion for him who is born out of it. For many people, poetry, if it's a passion born out of it, it turns out to be a true bard. He might be a true born bard, a born poet. While if it's a fashion, it's a fashion, wants to go with it, he can't even can't sustain. Only a true born bard can survive, but not a cultivated poet or a fashionista can sustain. Not to sustain in this world of poetry, not in the sense like there's no genuinity of that person or his product. So if you really literally have that drive in you, literally have that authentic feel in you that there's voice emitting within you, then you will turn out to be a good poet and you can write it. You will be a successful poet. So successful poet in the sense at least your name will be heard elsewhere. At least you will be read somewhere. There are certain people who take it as a matter of fashion, and there'll be no way as simple as to say that. And I would like to summarize it and conclude it with this: like, not that everything you write is poetry, and that every person who writes is a poet. Thank you, Prasanna sir, for giving me an opportunity to speak something about my poetry, my ideology, my journey with my poetry. Thanks a lot. Thanks you once again. Signing off.